Neverwinter is an action combat MMORPG game that is based around the Dungeons & Dragons franchise, and it released on PC back in 2013. It's also a multi-platform game available on both Xbox and PlayStation, and according to Steam, you'll see an active hourly population of about 1 to 1,500 players over on PC, so it has a reasonable amount of daily activity, and you'll always see players running around in the game, making it feel populated. The game is a fully voice-acted, story-driven MMO game. There's a lot of solo adventures and campaigns to complete, but you'll also find some challenging group PvE content such as dungeons and raids. Neverwinter has a classic MMO vibe, and on first impressions made me feel like I was playing a more simplified version of World of Warcraft with a slight sprinkle of Final Fantasy. Both the graphics and sounds in the game gave a classic MMO vibe, which attracts me from a nostalgic perspective as a 20-year MMO veteran. I've recently played 60 hours of Neverwinter from a complete beginner's perspective, and in this video I'll share my experiences and give you my opinion on whether Neverwinter is an MMO game worth playing in 2023. The level cap in this game is just level 20, and you can reach this level cap in just a few hours. The only way of leveling is by following the leveling adventure quest. This whole part of the game was compressed in the past few years by the devs, and they've actually created a fast, simple and fun leveling experience where you are taken across a few different areas of the game, you're taught about some of the basic systems, and you get involved in the story while also being given items that help you straight away. You're thrown straight into the action with this game, fighting enemies across a bridge, getting straight into the story on your way to the first main hub city. At level 2 you're given a mount, and not long after that you were given a combat companion. This is really good for beginner players as you can move across the areas quickly thanks to the mount, rather than being intentionally slowed down to prolong the beginner experience like you experience in some other MMO games. But your mount also has some combat damage, which is quite a unique feature that I've not seen before. You can buff up your mount with insignias, which adds additional benefits to your character, and when you get a companion you can gear them up, give them different abilities, and they help you out with healing or damage. One of the big differences with this beginner experience is that it's actually challenging. Most other games take you to really easy areas with easy mobs to kill and kind of babysit you through every button press, every game function, but not Neverwinter. It's quite refreshing to experience a reasonably challenging combat at this early level stage of the game. As you progress you'll be given upgraded gear from your quests along with various other items, so you have no reason to go off the track. You just follow where the game tells you to go, and this is also something that I really like. The navigation is good. You'll see a starry trail that's on the ground showing you where to go, so it is really hard to get lost or lose the track of what you're supposed to be doing. I guess one of the strangest things about Neverwinter's leveling is that you gain no experience points for anything. You don't have an experience bar. It's a strange system where it sometimes feels like a bit of a waste of time to kill enemies if you can just skip or avoid them, because they offer no character progression. Overall, the leveling system works great because this has to be one of the fastest 0 to level cap MMO games that you'll find. The combat in this game is an active combat system where you'll have to block, dodge, basic attack, rotate cooldown abilities, and manage resources in this somewhat simplistic but fun combat system. Many of the mechanics that you'll experience include moving out of AoEs, hiding behind objects, and dealing with waves of adds. At the very start of the game, once you choose your character's race and class, you'll immediately have 3 skills unlocked. The good thing about this is you get the opportunity to try things out before you progress too far, and you can decide at this point whether or not you like the combat system and the combat style of a specific class, or whether you want to re-roll and make a new character with a different class. I personally chose Paladin in preparation for eventually becoming a tank, and was surprised to see this was a game where a tank was capable of doing good damage in solo situations, even when progressing as a tank, which is often not viable. The most difficult part of the combat system is the basic attacks. You can hold down left or right click on your mouse, and your character swings their weapon to do basic attacks. When doing this, you are locked in place and cannot move, so this can often bring up some issues, especially when you're trying to deal with mechanics. Initially, it seems like this will be quite a slow combat system with just the 3 abilities, but this is not the case. There are more layers to the combat system, and it's actually very fast paced and active. Due to being locked in place for basic attacks, you have to really think about how to use them effectively while managing the mechanics. You'll have 2 types of basic attack, I personally went for one single target and one AoE to manage the different scenarios. And then you also get 2 options for daily abilities, which is a confusing name for basically an ultimate attack, which can give you some big burst damage or defensive tools. For a paladin, I had a stance which I could use, and you've got a mount which you can equip, one that can be used as an ability during combat, which is a pretty unique feature. It's possible to stable 5 mounts in total to give you a range of passive perks too. You then have an artifact which can cause a range of different effects. You can also equip 3 items of whatever you like. This can include items that do more damage, so they're essentially additional skills, and you might also equip potions here. All of this is while managing both cooldowns, stamina, and your spendable resource of divinity, which is needed with some abilities. The way Neverwinter works is this is a heavily combat story-driven MMO. You'll have cutscenes, full voice acting, and plenty of lore and character development, all tied into the Dungeons & Dragons theme. It's a pretty good story-driven game with a lot of solo story instanced expeditions. Even if you don't know a lot about D&D like me, you can still enjoy what the game has to offer from a combat story perspective. As you progress in the game, you'll have adventures, which are stories that take you to a certain area where you complete a range of quests in both an overland map and some instanced expeditions. You then have campaigns, which are a similar thing again, but you have a range of daily and weekly quests, along with currencies to collect, which you can spend to complete the campaign or buy area relevant items. These can be completed both solo, or you can group up and do them with other players. The sheer volume of currencies and limits those currencies have is a bit excessive, because every time you go to a new area, there is a new currency. Every time you start a new quest line, there's a new currency. It can be quite overwhelming for a new player. You have to sift through them to find out which ones are the most beneficial, how you spend them, and what you spend them on. For players who want to speed through to the end game, it can feel like quite a grind, because you need to upgrade your item level, and a lot of this is locked behind campaign currencies, and it can take quite a bit of time. When it comes to other content, the PvE content is most prominent. You have skirmishes, which are fairly easy 5-person content, where you group up and deal with waves of enemies. You then have 5-person dungeons, which unlock later in the game, which are tied to item level and quest progression. These are very fun and fast-paced, with increased difficulty the newer dungeon that you attempt. There's also advanced dungeons and master versions, which are the real top-tier dungeon content. You also have 10-player raids, which again are locked into item level and story progression, and these are large group content with much more complicated mechanics and much stronger bosses. There is PvP in Neverwinter, but it feels like a side part of the game with very little focus. When I spoke to some veteran players of the game, they told me that people don't really participate in PvP. There are some faction and guild events, and there is the possibility of queuing up for 5v5, 10v10, and 20v20 PvP, but you could be waiting quite a while to get a group. It's quite easy to just completely avoid any kind of PvP content in Neverwinter. For the most part, if your focus is group content, you can easily get into the early stages of it within a few days, and you'll be able to start doing dungeons, raids, and advanced dungeons. If you want to reach the absolute end game, where you're doing master raids and dungeons, then you might find yourself needing to play the game for a few months, if not even longer, before you'll be anywhere near. One of the most disappointing parts about the game is the grind. From the first impressions, it doesn't seem that bad. You level up super quick, you get your artifact, your mounts, your companion, your enchants, and you'll need to upgrade them, which can take quite a bit of time. And this is, I think, expected for an MMO. The bad part is, even though you can only equip one combat companion, you can equip one mount, you can stable 5 mounts, you can use one artifact, you still need to have 10 of each maxed out to bloat your item level, just to do the endgame content. This requires huge amounts of both luck, a huge amount of grinding, or money. So just to look at a few pros and cons of Neverwinter. First of all, the pros. It's a multi-platform MMO that's completely free to play, and the new releases are also free. The game still feels populated even today, and it has good performance on PC. It's fun, fast-paced, and simple combat system, and it's got some unique aspects to it. It's got a good combination of story mixed with combat. It's a really good beginner experience and very fast early progression. Dungeons and raids are really fun, and there's decent mechanics, along with the very fast-paced style. It keeps them very entertaining, and there's regular in-game events that aid your progression. For some of the cons, it sometimes feels like a bit of a solo RPG rather than an MMO early on, with the instance quest areas, although you can group up with friends and co-op for these. It can seem quite lonely as you're just kind of doing these all by yourself. It can take years to grind your character to a high item level to do the top tier end game content. There's virtually no PvP focus and it's hard to participate in PvP content, so if you are a PvP player, this might not be the game for you. There is an overwhelming amount of content once you hit level 20, it's hard to know what to focus on. There's an unbelievable amount of currencies and limits which can be quite confusing. And many people complain about the game being pay to win, but it is more of pay to progress faster. Anyone who is hooked on this game is probably going to cough up money to get that progression to save themselves potentially years of grinding. So in conclusion, overall I've really enjoyed my time in Neverwinter. I'm in between MMO games, playing some I've not tried before and waiting for big releases in other games. This has been a really pleasant and fun experience. I've really enjoyed the combat, the story is not excessively long, so it's easy to get into and enjoy it, and it's very combat orientated. The dungeons are enjoyable and not too difficult even when using the random group finder. I've met some super helpful players in game and on my Twitch streams who've grouped up and ran content with me, gave me some solid info and advice to help me progress on the right path. In terms of tanking, it's once again a role that you'll see highly requested in the game, in the chat, and it's not too difficult to get into that, but you will find yourself getting one shot by bosses even when you're sitting on 1,000,000 max health. If you are a hardcore MMO player who loves challenging endgame content, then this game will take up a lot of your time, and it is quite a grind, or will cost you a lot of money to fast track your progress. Some people say the game is massively pay to win, but you can play and obtain most things without spending anything, but you'll definitely progress faster by paying. VIP seems like a decent purchase if you're intending on playing for a while, as you get daily keys, other perks and benefits that go alongside that. I would say that this is definitely a game worth trying, especially if you're into D&D or story MMOs, and especially if you have a friend or two to play along with. It's completely free to play, and without paying a penny, you have access to all content. You'll be able to jump in and play most of the dungeons and raids within just a week or so of playing and progressing, and so this could be a nice short-term stopgap MMO to play and enjoy the story while you're in between games. And for any veteran MMO players, you might really enjoy the somewhat classic fantasy MMO feel you get from playing Neverwinter, so it's definitely worth a few hours of trying it out. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Neverwinter. I am going to try and work on a few little bits of content with this game, including a bit of a review on the tanking. We're going to look at a tank build maybe, a bit of a tank guide, just some basic info on how you can progress as a tank in this game. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.